This is a parent's guide for writing in years 5 and 6 at Newlands Primary School. My name is Miss Hawke and I'm the Deputy Head Teacher, and I'm also the phase lead for Year 5 and Year 6. So over the next 10 minutes or so, I want to give you an overview of what writing looks like in Year 5 and 6 and how we teach it. So how do we organise our writing? We organise our writing in different genres. So it may be descriptive writing, narrative, maybe writing a story, maybe persuasive or a newspaper report, maybe procedural, we might call those instructions, maybe something factual, often that's called a non-chronological report, or an explanation. And those are the sorts of genre that we use. So we try to have a balance of those over the course of the 2 years that the children are in Year 5 and Year 6. We try to make sure that the genre that we're teaching captures their children's interest in some way. So, for example, last year we did a descriptive piece about how Howard Carter might have felt when he entered King Tutankhamun's tomb for the first time. At the moment, we're writing a narrative. We are writing a quest story based on a fictional island called Alchemy Island. Last year, we wrote two letters of persuasion to Dr. Bryce, who was the doctor in the book that we were reading, Pig Heart Boy. Later on this year, we're going to write a newspaper report based on the book Skellig, which is about a man, or is he an angel, who's found in a garage. Later on in the term, also, we're going to write a procedural piece about looking after a fictitious monster plant that's based on the book Skellig, and it's also based on a little bit around Aubrey, who was the plant in the Little Shop of Horrors. Last year, the children wrote a factual report, a non-chronological report about the country of Mexico, and they've just finished writing an explanation about how to use a spy gadget that they created themselves. So what the children write is based on something that we think will be of interest to them. The writing process. So the writing process is in a number of steps. We start off by building vocabulary with the children to make sure they have enough words and enough breadth of words to be able to write to a good standard. We then might teach them some grammar that is based on the text that they'll be writing about. And then they see a model text, so they'll see what a text should look like. They get to plan their writing, then we write and we edit and we produce a final piece. And this process is the same for each of the pieces of writing that we do in class. Vocabulary building can take place in a number of ways. Now, all these activities here were based on our descriptive writing for discovering Tutankhamun's tomb. We can use pictures to generate vocabulary, and often we'll use a thesaurus dictionary to help us with that. We can sort words, so the children are given a collection of words that they need to sort and choose which ones they'd like to use. We can practice using vocabulary, and we can practice putting those together to make little descriptive sentences. So the whole of the vocabulary building sessions are based on developing vocabulary so that the children have got the depth of words that they need in order to write to a Year 5-6 standard. After the vocabulary, we'll often teach grammar. So here's an example. We were looking at subordinating conjunctions, and this is also based on the descriptive writing for Tutankhamun's tomb. So the children will get some examples of how to use it, and we'll talk about it a lot. And then the children will practice using that particular piece of grammar. It may be subordination, it may be using the passive voice, it may be looking at the imperative, it may be looking at adverbials, a whole range of things that the children will need to be able to write at a Year 5-6 standard. Now, don't worry too much if you're not sure about the grammar that we use in school, because over the coming weeks I'll be putting little 10-minute grammar videos up to explain some of the terminology that we use in school. Here's another example of how we might use grammar. So they have a little descriptive piece, and this was based on um, describing what the garage might have looked like in the book Skellig. And the children might be asked to write 7 sentences, and each sentence has got to have a particular aspect of grammar within it. So it may be building noun phrases, it may be adverbials or relative clauses, some idea of subordination either at the beginning of a sentence or within the sentence, looking at a present participle, which is another type of adverbial, and then making that powerful sentence for impact. And all this is based on the grammar that we teach the children over the year. So once we've built up the vocabulary and once we've looked at the grammar that the children might need, the next thing we do is to start to look at a model text. What one might look like, what a good one might look like. And as you can see, the texts are of a decent length for the children to be able to get their teeth into. And it's the same similar length to which we would expect children to be writing. So we've got here an example of the explanation text about how a spy gadget works. And here we've got the text, the procedural text on how to look after my plant. And here we have the model text for a piece of writing that would eventually be based on Frozen Kingdoms. As you can see, the context of this is based on a desert scene. And you can see within this, we've got various types of sentence construction based on the grammar that the children have learnt, but also we're giving the children good examples of the vocabulary that they need over time. So once the children have got an understanding of a model text, and this is the model text that we are currently using for writing a holiday review. So once they've got an example of the model text, our next job is to box up the model. That means we take the model text and we break it down into its component parts. So the first bit of this is saying something exceptional about the destination and actually naming the destination. And then the next 2 paragraphs are describing particular aspects of the destination, saying who would like to visit that place, and then describing that place according to who might like to visit. So, for example, in this paragraph here, it starts off with for those interested in nature, and then everything around that holiday destination is all about nature. And the second one here is for visitors interested in the island's culture. And then everything in that paragraph there is about the island's culture. So we use the model text and we use the boxing up model to make it clear how this text was constructed in the first place. And then once we've done that, we can start to plan our own. And you can see that the boxing up and the planning is the same. So here, the children have broken down the model text into its component parts. And here, the children will build up their own text based on what they already know. This is a really successful method for helping the children to organise their ideas before they write. Because whenever we write, we have to organise what we want to say first. And then once we start writing, there's a number of ways that we might do it. So we might do it like this, and we might teach the children types of sentences that they will need in order to be successful in this writing style. We might model this for the children by writing it for ourselves on flip charts so that the children can see us doing it for real, for live. And sometimes the children get a little bit less structure and are asked to write free from their planning. The editing process is more than just checking for capital letters and full stops and spelling, although that is really important. In our editing process, we talk about the sense, the tense, the punctuation, and then the spelling. The sense is, have I got this right? Does it sound right? Have I got the audience right? The tense is, am I keeping the tense, the verb form, the same throughout? And there's the punctuation and spelling. Now, here's an example of how we might edit for sense. So, one of the errors, a common error that the children might make, and this was when they were writing letters of application to be on board Ernest Shackleton's International Trans-Antarctic Exhibition. exhibition, expedition. So here we've got a common error. The common error is repeating a point more than once. And here are examples that I took from the children's written work. So, for example, they might have said, I want to go on the expedition to prove my family wrong, to prove my country wrong, to prove people wrong. Or they might say, choose me because I'm a good cook. And then a bit later on say, I'm a good cook. And then a bit later on say, I'm a good cook. Or similarly about adventure, adventure, adventure. So to identify a common error for the children and then get them to look in their own work to see if they can find where that error is in their own work. Repetition of ideas and vocabulary is often a big problem for our children. They want to say what's in their plan, but it's about developing that vocabulary to help them to avoid repeating the same point. So here's another example of where they might have gone wrong for sense. So they're writing about an expedition that took place 100 years ago, and they may use modern vocabulary. So here we've got my sailing skills are on point, or this trip will give me the opportunity to get my family on side. Or over the last few years, I have come over to thinking I am a good explorer. All of these are modern terms, and actually, if you were writing to go into Shackleton's expedition, you wouldn't use these modern terms. So again, it was something that we looked for in the sense aspect of editing our work. So once we've edited it, we want to show it off. It's really important that the children feel proud about their written work. And so we work very hard with the children to give them the opportunity to really show off what they have achieved. And you can see here we've got our Mexico reports, we've got our looking after our alien plant reports, we've got our letters to Dr. Bryce, I think we've got a couple of other things here. We've got our Howard Carter work, we've got our Skellig reports, and I think here these are our explanations and our descriptions for spy bad guy. And on this here, I've got for you the final display that we made, but also you can see here we've got examples of where it's been written as a class teacher writing it for the children to see. And here we've got examples of where we've chosen really good things that the children have achieved, and we put it all together to help motivate the children. So once we've edited it, we always do a final copy, and it goes on display because it's important the children feel proud about their written work. Now, I mentioned earlier grammar guides. There's lots of terminology that we know in year 5 and year 6 and that we teach in year 5 and year 6 that's new to very, very many people. So I'm going to try and put at least one weekly online grammar guide on the parents' guide. That should help a little bit when the children come home and talk about what it is that they've been doing in class. And then finally, I wanted to just give you some pointers on what you could do to help at home, to help improve the children's writing or to help them feel more confident about their writing. So to help your child, more than anything, it's really important that they learn their spellings each week. Children who are good spellers are more confident writers. You lose your train of thought if you've got to stop and try and work out how to spell a word. So really important that they can get as close to full marks as they can on their spelling test each week. Now, good writers are good readers. And so it's really important that the children read each evening. There's no more important way of helping the children to be a good writer than encouraging them to be a good reader. And my last plea is if the children do any writing at home, if they do anything that's written work at home, it doesn't matter how fancy their writing is, it must always start with a capital letter and finish with a full stop. That is the most important thing. We often have children who experiment with all sorts of different sentence constructions, but they then miss out the capital letter and the full stop. So to help at home, if the children can learn their spellings weekly, can read each evening, and if when they're writing anything, just check it has a capital letter and full stop. Those are the best things you can do to help the children. I'm hoping that's been helpful for you. Mrs. Prince has asked if we can encourage you to type this into your web browser and give us some feedback on the grammar on the guides that we are producing. We want to know what's working and we want to know how to change things that aren't working. So thank you for watching the guide today. Do look out for the grammar guides that come up, and I will speak to you again.